You're listening to the Franchise Freedom Podcast with Giuseppe Grammatico.
Welcome to the Franchise Freedom Podcast. I'm your host, Giuseppe Grammatico, your franchise guy, the show where we help corporate executives experience time and financial freedom via franchising. Thanks for joining us today. Today's topic is how a franchise will give you an unfair advantage. And the unfair advantage I talk about in my book, Franchise Freedom, same title as the show. And that unfair advantage, what exactly am I referring to? So in that advantage, in talking about the difference between just say a startup and a franchise business, is that there's going to be a couple factors. Number one is the culture, the community, working with other franchise owners. A lot of the franchise companies will have an annual meeting where you're meeting with your fellow franchisees, and they may come from different industries. You have franchise owners that maybe had a background in marketing and sales, in tech, maybe they utilize AI and other things. So the unfair advantage is something along the lines of having that built-in mastermind, that built-in culture, that support system where you may have hundreds of franchisees across the country that are able to provide insight, feedback, collaborate, and work on some marketing efforts, some acquisition efforts and things like that. That's in my opinion, an immediate unfair advantage, because now you're going in, as soon as you buy that franchise, you have access to the system and the entire community overall. Other aspects of the unfair advantage that we talk about are speed to opening, our service brands, I should say, that don't require an office or brick and mortar, that could be run from home because you are going to the customer versus the customers coming to your location. Those can, in many cases, be opened up in 30 to 90 days. And usually that higher end of 90 days involves a wrapped vehicle, a leased vehicle, something along those lines, as well as equipment. You see that in the restoration space where you need a wrapped van or truck, as well as some equipment. The painting space, the cleaning space where equipment is going to be shipped to you along with some wrapped vehicles. So the unfair advantage is the speed to get open, and that's a major advantage. We've seen brands as little as 30 days, where there's maybe no employees to start or few employees, no vehicles or equipment. Maybe it's a coaching service or an executive recruitment franchise. The range is typically in that 30 to 90 days. So that, what does that mean? Well, typically, I would say a majority of the people we work with are getting some type of loan. So you're putting a down payment. Then you're starting to make those loan payments, whether they're full payments or just interest only. So we look at cash on cash return, where maybe you put 30% down on an SBA loan and start to hopefully experience some returns, earn some dividends on that money. Other advantages are vendor relations, such as if you're buying a product, they have economies of scale. If you're in the painting business, obviously getting some larger discounts that just a small mom and pop maybe buying the same paint from the same vendor. So that's one major advantage. Marketing, I think, is one of the huge advantages there, where they're able, in many cases, franchise are able to have an in-house marketing department where those leads get funneled to a call center. So you don't need to hire these people. They're hired directly from the franchisor is hiring them. So you're paying a fee. So that's saving you money. You're not needing to find office space, saving you also time and money. You're still paying a fee, but overall it's going to be a savings for marketing as well as a call center. But you have the advantage too of, every franchise, if you have a restoration business across the country, they know the business, whether it be in New Jersey or California, businesses are going to be very similar way of acquiring customers, networking with just say plumbers and HVAC companies in your area. So the advantage of learning of what the marketing looks like, the systems and things like that is a huge advantage because they've figured things out and they're learning. It's an evolving thing. They're factoring in how to use AI, how to make the call center much more efficient to where they can gather your information and ask the customer, when they're going to maybe pay their invoice or schedule a painting service, have you also looked at our cleaning service that we've just recently added? So these unfair advantages start to stack up and add up overall. So mastermind, that in and of itself is a huge advantage. The speed to open, to start paying back that investment, the vendor relations, the economies of scale, marketing, and things like that. So these are some major advantages, but those advantages are only advantages for people that are a good fit for franchises. And just to recap, the things we look for, are you a good fit for a franchise? It's simply, are you able to follow a system? And keeping in mind, as from the previous episode, you don't need experience in that particular business. What you do need is a certain skill set. So willingness to follow a system and a certain skill set, depending on that role of the franchise owner. So you don't need to be an expert. If you have a sales background, obviously that's going to translate. You could do sales, and it's a transferable skill, right? So you could do sales in just about every industry. So don't focus necessarily on the industry and knowing, I went from Wall Street to, whatever the business is, building services or restaurants or whatever the case may be. So don't focus necessarily on the industry. Brick and mortar businesses, you'll have some advantages there as well. Still going to take time to open, but now you're working with maybe a third-party vendor that is able to approve and find you a location faster than traditionally done in the past. So that's going to be a major advantage. Funding, going back to funding, that's another advantage where funding companies are familiar with that specific business model. Hopefully getting the loan approved much quicker. Hopefully some better terms and rates. So the list goes on. But again, this is for people that are a good fit. If you don't want to follow a system, or you're thinking of owning a restaurant franchise and starting to change the entire menu, probably not a good fit, and that's okay. This franchising is not the right fit for everyone. You really have to kind of sit back and say, okay, why do I want to own a business? And a lot of people look for the time and financial freedom, building a legacy. I was talking to someone today. They have 3 kids between high school and college, and they want to create that legacy and pass that business down. That's great. It could be done with a startup. It could be done with a franchise. But the system is where you take it. You're taking advantage of that. That unfair advantage. You're getting that unfair advantage of learning the system. Franchisor has really figured out the most economical way to do business, the best way of doing business via the process. They document. It's an evolving thing. They improve. They take feedback from the franchisees and just make the system better. Talking to some of the larger brands at the last few conferences, we talked about ways of keeping the business as lean as possible, making it easy to scale. So if there are essentially not having to incur some of the costs where maybe those costs they can group them together, and offering, for example, recruitment for W-2 and 1099s. Instead of paying a recruiter for each placement, they group it together where you pay a flat monthly fee, and they handle all your staff and finding your staff. So, they're always looking for ways to make it easier to do business, keep a lot more of that overall revenue, because the more successful you are, the more successful the franchisor is. It's a win-win for everyone. The goals are truly lined up. So these are some of the unfair advantages. If you hear me use this term, I talk about it in my book. You can pick it up right on Amazon, Franchise Freedom. I think it's the hardcover is under $5, 99 cents for the Kindle version. So you can pick it up there. We had some audio versions as well where we talk high level of the process in the book. If you go to our website, you can download the ebook PDF file. So ggthefranchiseguide.com, click on the book link, and be more than glad to share the book with you. So it's my exact blueprint of what I've learned over the years and how I found my franchises. So unfair advantage. Definitely take a look at that. Do a search, see how many times it comes up. But I'm it gets me really excited because when I own a business, right away I wanted to start scaling, revenue, making a profit, getting that team in place. So we talk at length and a lot more detail in the book. So hope you enjoyed today. Take advantage of that unfair advantage. Pick up the book. Let me know your thoughts. And if there's a topic that you'd like covered, future episode topics, or maybe we'll call it part 2 of the franchise freedom book, where we dive into some other specific areas. Looking for suggestions. We're even thinking of creating an audio book, which we have not done in the past, for the original version. That may be something to look out for in 2024. Thanks again for your support. Thanks again for your questions, and looking forward to catching up very soon. Take care, everyone.
Thanks for tuning in. Whenever you're ready, here are 3 ways Giuseppe can help. 1. If you've ever considered owning a business of any kind, you owe it to yourself to get a copy of Giuseppe's book, Franchise Freedom. Download your free copy at ggthefranchiseguide.com/book. 2. Want to understand how successful executives make the transition from corporate to owning their own franchise? Join Giuseppe's next online presentation, Franchise Freedom: How to Escape the Corporate World and Have Financial and Time Freedom by Owning a Franchise, by going to ggthefranchiseguide.com/video. 3. Want to work with Giuseppe one-on-one to identify the right franchise opportunity for you, to navigate the process, and get plugged into experienced franchising advisors? Send him an email to gg@ggthefranchiseguide.com with one-on-one in the subject, and he'll send you all the details.